I got sober at the age of 24. I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. I knew that it was not in alignment with who I was meant to be.
They're doing certain things that I don't know why they're doing it, but the next day it's like, well, that didn't really help me.
You're talking about people who are reflecting and have the self-awareness enough to say, oh, I'm doing something that's not working. But what about the step before that?
In our community, a lot of our fight-flight response is hyperactivity, hyperproductivity.
Yes.
We're doers.
I love when we look at our own lives. Okay, here's where I'm at. How can I be even 1% better? We are in 2025, and even though we're not right at the start of 2025, a lot of people have still been asking me, what is the thing that you're letting go of? And what do you want to bring into the new year? And, moving forward, there's a lot that I feel I would answer with, but one thing that is new for me is reevaluating how I use alcohol and how I see alcohol. It's been an interesting journey. And I know there's so many of our guests that have made their own remarks about their relationship with alcohol and how they use it.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to have this conversation today.
We have an amazing guest, thanks to Nikhil Torsakar, who introduced us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Nisha Patel. Nisha from Georgia, what's up?
Hello. So glad to be here.
Before we let Nisha and Seema finish the introduction part, Nisha, if people stick around, what are they going to take away from today's episode?
What can you do if you're starting to evaluate your relationship with alcohol or any substance? What you can do if you want to get help.
Yeah.
And then also questions or just dialogue you can have with families, loved ones that are needing help or that you want to give help to, but you don't know how to approach.
I love it.
Whether you drink alcohol at all or you don't, whether you drink socially once a week, once a month, if you have kids that are in middle school, high school, college age, I know this is a topic that many South Asian parents tend to think about because we all have our cultural norms and beliefs that we've been, brought up with. And so I'm excited to get into it today. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I think that there's a health movement where people are doing dry November, dry January. A lot of people are talking about alcohol being one of those things that you're criticized for not using it. It's one of those things that people question, why are you not drinking versus why are you drinking, right? And I think our conversation today is not going to be relevant only to alcohol. It's going to be relevant to any type of, I hate to say it, but any type of coping mechanism, whether it's social media, whether it's food, whether it's shopping, whether it's any type of behavior that gets you out of being uncomfortable and helps you calm down, soothe yourself, right? Except podcasting. If podcasting soothes me, it helps me calm down, but it is not a coping mechanism. It is a mechanism of outreach so we can have such fantastic conversations.
I think in today's world, everything goes so fast. We're getting all these subliminal messages from social media, from TV, from society, how we've been brought up, and we kind of default rather than think about whether or not we're coping or celebrating. And Nisha, you come with such a wealth of knowledge here.
Yeah,
absolutely. I love that. Coping versus self-soothing, right? What are the differences and how do we know if it's healthy or unhealthy?
Mm-hmm.
I'll use my example with working out for me and myself, right? You all know I'm very passionate about health and fitness and all things. And a lot of times people will go, well, how do you know not like unhealthily obsessed or using it as an unhealthy coping mechanism? Great question, because I'm consistent. And I think when people see consistency like that, they may assume that, oh, you're overboard, right? And I will say maybe about 20 years ago, it was probably unhealthy. Why? Right? Because when I used to exercise multiple times a day. And it really was to quiet my mind, but to escape the life I was living. There was something inside of me I didn't know at the time that was unsettled.
Yeah.
And so I was using this physical output as a way to escape and quiet the mind. Yeah. Also just let out that extra energy. I always used to say, I have extra energy. I naturally do, right? But today when I go lift weights, right, 4 times a week, I'm not disconnected from my life. I'm not disassociated. If my husband's texting me for something, I'm responding. Yeah. I'm talking to people. I'm working. I'm texting, whomever back. I'm not disconnecting. and going, oh, okay, I'm going to numb this stressor for now and do this thing. It's
Yeah.
not for numbing.
Can I give you my test of how I reached that same conclusion?
Yeah.
Whatever I'm doing, because there's no good or bad. I think what's good for
Right.
me is bad for you, vice versa, right? Here's a test that I came up with for my own personal life. If I do it and I do it a lot, and then I think to myself, one of these three things, which is like, I got to knock that off. I can't do this anymore. This is not, this is too much. It's a coping mechanism for me, right? Think about drinking, you think about video games, you think about anything like where you have this recoil after you do it of regret, where like, I just can't spend 10 hours watching TV any longer. But if I do it and I'm uplifted, I'm enriched, I come back and my recoil is positive and wanting to do more, it makes me feel good about myself. Then I know it's that distinction of where it's fueling me. It is charging me up as opposed to something that I'm using to cope, and I'm only using as a crutch when something else is out of balance with me.
I really love that. One thing that I will share, since both of you shared, was I was listening to the podcast that Dr. Ranjan Chatterjee has. And, he kind of echoed the sentiment of, are you acting out of fear or are you acting out of love? Right. Am I doing something because I'm saying, oh, I'm going to work out, not because I have to, or because if I don't, I'm going to gain weight or all these negative things are going to happen. I'm doing it out of avoidance of something. I'm doing it because it's going to really be an act of self-love for me. It's going to be done with joy versus, I can't stand whatever situation. So I'm going to have a glass of wine, go to bed after binge watching Netflix, whatever, right? I love your recoil of regret. I'm going to take that.
And I think, we're talking about substances, and let's go in, like alcohol, right? People go, well, how do I know it's a problem or it's not? Because we can justify. And I tell my clients, like, when you cross a line from I want to I have to, I have to use it in order to socialize. I have to use it before a big business meeting. I have to have another. That's when that's a good point or a starting point to start questioning, reevaluating. You don't have to stop. It doesn't mean you have a problem.
Right.
But why do you have to? What would happen if you didn't?
I love it. That's good. But we got to go back a little bit. Tell us all your credentials and your qualifications, and tell us what we can't get by looking you up at your website, TheNishe, NISHE, your Instagram.
So I'm a licensed professional counselor, trained in DBT and hypnotherapy.
What's DBT?
Dialectical behavior therapy. So it was a form of treatment. It's like CBT. It's got a mindfulness component. And it was created to help people with borderline personality disorders, bipolar, addictions. Really, it was used to help high-risk clients stay out of the hospital system and be able to learn the skills they need to in their environment, right? In order to get healthy versus removing them. Because a lot of times what's found is you can get healthy, you can get sober, you can get mentally stable inside an environment, inside a treatment or something like that. But when you come back into society is when it's hard to actually apply what you've learned.
Yeah.
Right? And that's really even with sobriety. How do I integrate back into society? That is where a lot of people stumble and fall. I don't have the stats, but if you look at the stats on the number of success after people leave, something like that, it's pretty high of the relapse rates. And it's because of that. I don't think we're setting up a strong enough foundation on how to integrate them.
Interesting. But you didn't just wake up and decide, I'm going to be a sobriety, focus on that.
Nope. And so that's it. So that was my professional, right? Licensed professional counselor. And then I personally, and then I just combined my personal and my professional lives together. I would say I married them. I'm sober 16 and a half years now. So I got sober. Thank you. I got sober at the age of 24.
Wow.
I had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. I knew that it was not in alignment with who I was meant to be. I've always had a really strong spiritual connection with God. And really it came down to the point where I was like, if I know I'm not meant to do this, but I don't know how to stop. Right? Like doing that cycle over and over. Like you're saying, Dinesh, you're doing something and then you feel regret. You do something, you feel regret. Right? And I came to a point where I was like, okay, I'm either going to continue down this path and not fulfill whatever that purpose is. I don't know what it is.
Hmm.
Or I'm going to change the way I live my life and lead my life.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do that. And so I have an amazing family. And I tell the story. I called my dad because that's who he understood, he gets me,
Yeah.
rebel at heart. And I was like, hey, Dad, yeah, I think I have a problem. And he's like, oh, okay, well, I think you just need to pray. I told her, I was like, oh, I prayed all right. You told me to call you. I'm like, but my family quickly just surrounded me and just helped
Right.
me get some, therapy and support and all that I needed to just create that foundation in recovery and move forward. For me personally, I will say, I know a lot of people can't relate to this part, and some may be able to when you stop doing a substance that's not aligned with you. Once I stepped away from just alcohol and that numbing, it wasn't hard to continue because I felt so much more aligned once I had stopped.
Hmm.
Life was still hard. It was difficult. I had to go through my 30s, getting married, like all the things, right?
Yeah.
Without alcohol and being like, yeah, I don't drink.
Yeah.
But I did it. It was easier than before, for
Hmm.
sure. More awkward, but easier.
I think a lot of people might know this, but I don't. When someone tells you they're sober for 16 years or 10 years, what does that mean? I have two questions. One, does it mean that you no longer drink to an excess, or it means that you don't touch alcohol at all? And my follow-up question, how does someone who's in the presence of someone who says they're sober, how should they behave? Should they not drink in front of you? Should they not offer you a drink or whatever it is? If you could help us so that we can be supportive the way people were supportive to you.
These are both great questions, and stop me anytime. So sober, I just learned this, y'all. There's different variations of sober now.
Yeah.
So I am what I call old school. Like sober means no mind altering substance at all. So no alcohol for 16 and a half years. No, I haven't smoked anything, like no substances that would alter my mind. Yeah. Now there's also California sober now, which
Mm.
that's you don't drink alcohol, but you still smoke marijuana.
Mm.
So I think it's not black and white as it used to be. I think there's a lot of gray and middle ground now. But for me, sober is no mind altering substance.
Yeah. Is there a Texas sober, Seema?
I wouldn't know if there was one.
Got it. And how should we act around, or how should we conduct ourselves to be conducive? Because, I'm drawing from my experience of I'm Hindu, I don't eat beef, right? And so there's this dichotomy of this push and pull where someone who does eat beef asks me, like, well, do you mind if I order it in front of you? I don't say no, right? Like, and impose my dogma or my propaganda on people around me. There's only so much I can control, but I also feel bad that they're asking me, like, how obnoxious am I being that you need to ask me whether you can eat something around me? And maybe obnoxious is not the right word, but I can imagine something similar arises when you're out somewhere and someone has a drink, like, oh, should I be holding this in front of you? Like, quickly toss it. Like, what should I do? Right.
That's so funny. That's very kind of you. What you said is most people are worried about what to do with that sober person. Just be yourself. Be natural. If it's a close friend of yours that's disclosed to you, like, hey, we're going to a party, just FYI, I'm not drinking or something, maybe you ask them, like, hey, do you want me to just, like, bring you drinks or, like, whatever. If you need anything, let me know. But if it's a stranger or somebody, like, you cross paths with me, you're like, oh, Nisha, we're all having a party. You want a shot? Like, I can handle my own, right? To just go, no, thank you, I'm not drinking. So it's that same thing. It's just most people are able just to say no. Don't make a big deal of it. I think the worst thing one can do, which was done a lot to me, and it's fine. People didn't know what they didn't know, but to push it on somebody, right? Oh, it's just one. Are you sure? Oh my God, I just opened this old bottle of bourbon and it's the best tasting thing ever. Let's not. Or even it couldn't be that bad, right? Telling them that their story's not that bad. Being overly intrusive questions. Well, why don't you drink? A lot of times I tell people to start asking, well, why are you drinking? What's so good about it? We know so many stats about it now. And so I think just letting them take the lead.
What I heard you say there was not making somebody wrong for their choices and not demonizing the thing, right? Whether you go out or not go out, drink or not drink, eat meat, don't eat meat. But particularly since we're talking about alcohol, don't make them to be in the wrong for whatever their choice is,
Mhm.
which is, I know, easier said than done because there is more conversation around alcohol, its effects. How do we know if it's okay to just for ourselves to get curious? Oh, you stopped, you're sober. I'm actually curious about that. I mean, because sometimes we can wind up wading into waters where the other person's they're not okay with talking about it yet.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of times that's happening more and more now, right? Because you guys, it took me 16 and a half years to get comfortable sharing my story openly. Like,
Mhm.
it takes what it takes to get confident in it. And especially in our community, like, whoa, I was, I didn't make that decision lightly.
Mhm.
But I knew that I was meant to help on a greater level. So it was definitely purpose driven.
Mm.
So I think it's okay to say, wow, I admire your choice. Would you care sharing what made you decide to do that? What got you curious? Because I'm kind of curious and I'm toying with it. I think even asking what made them curious versus saying, why'd you stop, sounds
Mhm.
less harsh and abrasive
Yeah.
of just what led to the curiosity.
Mm.
Yeah.
Softer.
Yeah. Feeling the curiosity with curiosity.
I
Yeah.
think so. Well, and I think so. I think it's just a nice, gentle bridge, especially if they're new and they're
Mhm.
stumbling and fumbling, trying to figure out how they're going to say it to people
Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
weird.
That's great. And you
Okay.
mentioned our community. Can you talk to us about how this is showing up within the South Asian community, particularly for people? I mean, I know so many that are in these really high stakes jobs, and because of all these reasons we talked about, it's very much a part of their lives. But what are we seeing, and how is it manifesting?
I'm seeing actually these females come see me, whether it's young adults or even moms, starting to question the wine club and the wine every night,
Yeah.
the brunches, because they're like, I'm drinking and then the next morning I don't feel good and I get mad at my kids and I'm waking up like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be alcohol. It can be, well, when everybody goes to sleep, I eat a sleeve of cookies. Me
Mm.
too, right? Yes, sobriety coach, but really it's about, I'm doing these things that are really unaligned with me and I don't know how to stop. This
Yeah.
is the only thing I know. How do I stop these things and how do I live a life that's aligned,
Yeah.
right? To serve a purpose that I feel happy with on the inside as well as the outside.
I think that's really, nuanced. And I didn't have the need to seek out help or the help. But through like my old age and just like going through the years, I got to a point where I was able to identify what my best presentation to the world would be, right? And that's one where I'm awake, I have lots of energy, I'm enthusiastic, I've got high levels of emotional control, I have empathy, I have curiosity, and I'm determined, I'm focused, and I can sit with a task for a long time. And over the years, I started to notice certain behaviors just detract from that availability for myself. And alcohol got caught up in it because I started getting migraines the next day, right? And I would drink, and then the next day I would just lose like 4 hours to sleeping and to a migraine. And then I'd get up and just lay around on the sofa or whatever. And that would be like, this doesn't work. And same with going to bed late at night. I used to stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning working. And I was like, I'm not showing up the next day. I'm cranky, I'm tired. And then sugar was the next thing. And a sedentary lifestyle was the next thing, right? And slowly by slowly, I started to get to what you're describing, which is addition by subtraction. And I think you're saying that moms are seeing this with, or moms and dads, really anyone, where they're doing certain things that I don't know why they're doing it. But the next day, it's like, well, that didn't really help me, right? It
Yeah,
was a net negative.
they justify it by society, right? It is just such a heavy culture. I think, Seema, you were saying it earlier, of like quick fixes and getting to the solution fast, making yourself feel better. And then, it's confusing because the outside life, like you said, there's professionals who have really great jobs and everything looks good. They're checking the boxes of life,
Hmm.
right? Yet they have this one thing where they're making awful choices and they're like, why is this? Why
Yeah.
can't I control this thing when I can control everything outside of me?
Yeah.
What's happening? And I think that's when people start again, like you're saying, Dinesh, like getting curious and going, okay, this isn't working for me. But now it's like educating people on, okay, well, if it doesn't work for you, how do you take the hint?
Hmm.
Because a lot of people aren't going to do the self researching. They're not going to look it up and figure it out, right? And also, like therapy and coaching and all of that, it's still, people are still getting used to the idea and concepts of reaching out to a professional for mental health.
Right. Yeah.
As I was preparing for this conversation, I was sharing before we hit record, it was really a lens through which I started screening the societal messaging that we get and what my kids are seeing, both modeled in our family, but then also on TV and in books and things like that. You're talking about people who are reflecting and have the self-awareness enough to say, oh, I'm doing something that's not working. But what about the step before that? Because we're just drenched in it. We're steeped in this, this paradigm that's not true, but we all at some point maybe believed, right? I'm a mom and therefore I'm stressed all the time. My kids don't listen. My husband's making blithering mistakes and he won't listen and I'm running the show. And therefore, I'm insert main character from any of these sitcoms that,
Mm-hmm.
And you're justified with that glass of wine. Even I know people who work in these high stakes jobs and things in certain industries, they're like, well, that's just what insert industry, this is what we do. We're just heavy drinkers and this is our culture, right? Whether that's finance or venture capitalism or investment banking or what, like this is, I've watched people say, well, if I don't go along with this, then I'm not part of the group. And then if I'm not part of the group, that impacts my work. And then if it impacts my work, I'm a failure. Right. So talk us through that.
Yeah. And it depends on the level of severity of the person, right? So let's go with the most severe first. So this person has all these things and I have to drink because I've got to see clients and this is what we do. And, we host them and treat them and you don't understand. Well, what are you going to do when you're in jail? What are you going to do after DUI number 2? What are you going to do when your family leaves you? Because this is what happens. Like life doesn't just keep going. There's consequences nowadays. Everything can't get cleaned up, right? Like let's go to those that you see making poor choices over and over, and the outside noise is louder than the inside, right? Of knowing that it's not right. I think that's it. Because society does justify these extreme behaviors and normalizes it for us to where it's easy to quiet down that inside voice that's saying, this isn't right. This isn't good for me. Right. And I think even if you can give that voice a little bit of attention, right? So again, it would be what's before that. Okay, well, if you're somebody in that position and like, damn, drinking sucks, and the next day I wake up with a dark gray cloud and I have horrible thoughts. Nobody knows this, but I'll just lay in bed all day, sleep off these negative thoughts so I don't do anything dangerous, and then I'll get up and keep going. Yeah. Well, how about you just try to maybe do it less. Play around with that. That's what I'll say. So yeah, maybe it's not going to be taking every single shot, right? Maybe it's going to be taking half the shots. Whatever, and see what happens. Get curious about that. Is it a struggle for you? Is your body responding to it differently? Are you responding? Yeah. Because alcohol also helps you socialize. Liquid courage for a reason. Right. You might be able to say things to clients and people that you usually wouldn't say. It might give you a personality. Yeah. Having somebody stripped of all of that, you might be with a very introverted, quiet person. Likes to listen. And that's not going to attract people. So we also have to be mindful of that, right? There's that in between, there's a gray space. Yeah. Before.
With what you described, though, I think a lot of times we don't really think about how we're going to show up or what we're going to do sort of in a premeditated way. Like, I'm going to go out tonight. There's going to be shots and I'm going to take 50%. And so I have to project out that there are going to be 9 shots. I'm only going to take 4.5. I think that, is a very academic way. And we both know I'm joking. But what I've found with anything really where you're looking for behavior change is to just, see what you're capable of, see what's possible. And plan ahead of time. So my look, I'm addicted. I have to tell you, I'm addicted to chocolate chip cookies. I eat these things like there's no tomorrow. And so I have to thank God for Crumble. You guys have Crumble, but they now have the small cookies, so I can only fit three in a box, which is good because I have me and two kids, so three. And I plan like I'll only have one cookie a week, and that's a lot better than buying a whole tub of cookies and I'm like, oh well, I'll just eat today, right? And today turns out to be half of all the cookies. And so do you find like that works as well when it comes to like these social situations that are high stress, where your personality could impact how you're showing up, sort of being premeditated about it?
Absolutely. Being intentional is a big part, big, big part. Whether you're trying to just observe and get curious or you're doing the later of stopping, right?
Yeah.
I always work with people on if you're going to go to an event, if you're going to socialize, if you're going to work, let's plan it out. What are the triggers? What are areas that you may need help with? Even coaching people through conversation starters, right? We practice how to say I'm not drinking as much. We practice excuses. And like I have them look at me and tell me, and I question, and we sit there and have questions around this. I want them to feel confident because if you can feel confident in your decision that you made just for that night, and I say just for that night, then you're going to be able to follow through more likely. But if you're kind of fumbling with kind of a half plan of I promise you, most likely will just end up the same way you were the day before,
Yeah.
right? So really being intentional and practicing and gaining some confidence on why am I going to do this tonight?
I was recently in a situation where I chose not to drink because I've been just making that choice like this so far for lots of reasons, but I didn't say anything to anybody. I just knew I made that decision ahead of time. Midway through the dinner, I had somebody come up to me that was part of our group that said, "Why aren't you drinking?" So, and I said, "Well, I don't really feel like it right now," because I didn't really want to invite a lot of questions. I just said, "I don't really feel like it." And the response I got was, "So are you just like not going to drink ever now?" And I thought it was so interesting because it's like, why is it an all or nothing? Why are we saying because I'm not drinking right now for whatever reason, that means that I am never drinking? And subtext to that is you're taking that to mean that it's a judgment on the fact that you are drinking, is how I took it. Right. And so I just, my response, I think, was something like, well, I don't see value in, saying never. I don't know, but as long as I don't feel like it's helping me or that I want to, I won't. And I just let it go. This was not my first conversation where my decision made somebody else uncomfortable. Can you give the listeners some ways to maybe some language or what do we do?
That's such a good question. It is uncomfortable. It is so damn uncomfortable. And especially when someone's like, wow, for females, especially, are you pregnant? Like,
oh gosh,
oh my God. That used to be the test, when I was younger and married and everybody's getting pregnant, they'd be like, well, we can't tell if Nisha's not pregnant because she doesn't drink. And I'm like, okay, well, yeah, great. I'll keep a secret longer than most of you. But
I was actually outed because of that. We went to celebrate my 30-something birthday. It was with Monsi. I was carrying her and we weren't ready to tell because we had just found out. And I remember my decision, I thought I would grab a mocktail and it would be a good enough diversion. And people were like, but the strawberry daiquiris are served in these glasses, not the glass that you have. So what you have, you're saying it's a strawberry daiquiri, but it's not. And it caused this whole ruckus. And I watched people like not be able to handle the fact that I might be pregnant. And then as a result, it's like, I couldn't enjoy telling my friends like, hey guys, guess what? Like that option was gone then, right? The cat was out of the bag. Yeah. I mean, I've had
several friends that happen too, So yeah, back to the question of like, okay, what can people say? What are the one-liners? Really, I'm not drinking tonight. My stomach doesn't feel well. You give them some excuse. It doesn't. You tell them whatever you want. right? Um, Another one is I'm trying out dry January. Easy. It's not about the content that you say, it's just how confidently you deliver.
Right.
That gives off the like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are new and awkward in it. Again, you're not used to it. So again, if people aren't practicing with me, I tell them to practice in the mirror. Literally. Find 50 million ways you're going to say no. And what makes it right for you? Because my words may not sound good to you, but maybe that's not how you talk, right? And then you can always flip the script. I love doing that on people. Why does it make you so uncomfortable that I don't want to do it today?
Mm.
What's happening?
Yeah.
I get curious about other people. Why does it make you uncomfortable? Why is this throwing you for a loop? Do I drink that much?
Yeah.
Oh, you make light
And
of it a
see
little
what they
bit.
say.
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh, no, I'm not saying you overdrink. I'm just, I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I think everybody get a good laugh. And again, to be a diverse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Good stuff.
that's a good one. In the past, I have resorted to. I'm usually not one to make excuses for my behavior. Like I'll just tell you, I don't want it. But in the past, I have said I drank a lot last night, and I'm recovering. And no one's the wiser, like to know, like, well, did you really drink last night? I don't know, right? Or I drank a lot yesterday. I am dehydrated. I got to drink water first, and then usually they'll leave you. But that is a sore topic for me. Why do the bartenders insist on putting club soda in a tall glass, not in a short glass?
I think quite annoying. I think probably so that they don't get mixed up and somebody doesn't accidentally drink the wrong drink. But again, plan ahead. Go talk to the bartender.
Yeah.
I've had clients do this where they literally took nights of like lemonade and people thought they were taking lemon drops all night. Like
Nice.
they just told the bartender, like, hey, I'm sober. Can you just make my drinks look the same as everybody else's when they order them? And he took care of them.
I love
That's where I think the nuance is, right? Because what I said to the bartender was, can I have a virgin strawberry daiquiri? Not, hey, I'm trying to just lay low, right? I think the ask is different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
So
the ask is different, but you got to dig deeper, I think, in a lot of cases to what is preventing you from making a more transparent ask of like, hey, I'm not trying to drink versus like, I want a virgin daiquiri, right? I think for a lot of times people want to not drink or want to not do something, but they're having this cognitive dissonance with admitting it out loud to someone else. Because of that, I think it's all rooted in judgment of like, okay, what's the bartender gonna think of me? Like, am I a bad customer? Like, he's there selling drinks or she's there selling drinks, and I don't want what you have, right? But
I just meant for the pregnant ladies that don't want to share yet. That's what I meant.
Yeah. And I think also it's like when I was in California several months back, and I was going to this gala, and I was having dinner with my aunt the night before, and she's like, okay, wait. Well, number one, it was a Friday, and she's like, oh, you've had such a long day. You like we're working. You want a drink? And then she like awkward looked at me. She goes, I mean, you don't drink like a virgin drink? And I was like, it's no big deal. No, I don't want to drink. She goes, but you're going to a gala tomorrow. I said, yeah. And she goes, and you're not going to drink there. So do you just hold a drink and walk around? And I was like, no, my hands are going to get cold. I don't want to hold a drink and walk around.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, yeah, I thought that'd be really awkward that you just like, you're not drinking and you're there. Because people don't know what to do with themselves, whether it's verbal or with their hands.
Yeah.
I know it seems really like minute, but these little trip ups really can trip people up.
I agree. Yeah. I've heard cigarette smokers say that, like, I don't know what to hold in my hand if I'm not, holding a cigarette.
Yeah, I'll usually tell them like a small stone of some sort, some type of, or something that they can just rub.
Yeah.
Soft to give them that sensation of them moving. And then if it's the lips, obviously then the whole sensation is just like a straw. It's going to chew on a straw all the time.
Yeah.
But it can help with that.
Yeah. What would you say to the person who is listening to this and they're like, yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. It's 100% right. Alcohol is not good. People with the problem should seek help. If you're doing things and you're regretting, totally. All this makes sense, guys. But I'm cool. I just have one glass of wine every night and I like the taste of wine. It's refreshing. I don't need it. I just like it. And why are you telling me I can't do what I like? You like water, you like protein shakes, you like chicken. I like my Pinot Noir or Pinot Grigio. It's cold, it's a perfect temperature. Great. I agree with everything you're saying. But one glass of wine per night is not a problem for me. I have high levels of tolerance. I'm able to handle myself. All these things. What would you say to that person to make them consider that we might be actually talking about them?
I would ask them, what part did you agree with? What actually did you connect with in what we shared,
Mm,
Mm.
right? Because if you're telling me you're having this thing every night, you like it, it's what you do, you don't overconsume, you have high tolerance, I'd be like, interested, because that
mhm,
could be a problem.
Mhm.
But I would just say, what in our conversation sat with you? What resonated with you? Is
mhm,
it the part that, like, you have this life that looks so amazing on the outside, but on the inside, you don't have a spark? Is there
mm,
something missing?
mm,
Are you not feeling the full joy of your life? What is it?
mm.
Because sometimes it can be that thing, right? I mean, 14 years sober, you guys, and I hit a point in my life where I was like, wait, my spark is gone.
Hmm.
Whoa. I
Mm.
was like drowned in mom life.
Yeah.
And it really, even doing the work I did, I didn't catch it. I
Mm.
was like, what happened? Where did I lose myself? In momhood and wifehood and all businesshood, all of it.
Mhm,
And I go, when was I my happiest and when was I most in touch with myself? And I
mm,
kind of went backwards. And for me, I then took on a fitness journey to help me get reconnected with myself.
mhm,
And it brought my spark back. It was amazing. It was fun. And my family was all a part of that. Even if you're doing everything and doing what you need to do, but you're missing that spark, I would say, hey, let's evaluate what you are doing.
mm.
Because I think a lot of times also in our community, a lot of our fight flight response is hyperactivity, hyperproductivity.
Yes.
We're doers. I can produce so much darn work,
Yeah.
but if I'm not in the right headspace, it won't be in alignment. And when it's not in alignment, I don't think it's as powerful.
A really, really good answer. And I would encourage the listeners, I think on your podcast app, just left of the play or pause button, there's a little backwards arrow with like a 10 in it or a 30 where you can
Mhm.
rewind 10 or 30 seconds. I'd encourage you to hit that button and go back and listen to Nisha's answer. The answer to the question that she presented us with is the beginning of your next chapter. Wherever you are, it doesn't matter if you have a problem or if you're flying high, but we all have another chapter, we all have another level. And I think the answer to that is in that question. So I hope
Mhm.
you listen to it again.
What came to mind for me was I love when we look at our own lives and say, okay, here's where I'm at. How can I be even 1% better? All great. Many of you know I have a middle schooler. I have lots of friends who have high schoolers. They're going off to college. I have nieces and nephews that are in their first year, second year of college. Talk to us from that level, from that lens. Many South Asian parents that have a strong belief about, like, we don't drink, and therefore our kids know, they quote unquote know better. They won't. Versus also this concept of, I've also heard the opposite, where it's like, well, we're Punjabi or we're, this or we're that. This is how we live. Tell me about those choices where you're like, I'm going to introduce you
Mm.
to the alcohol so that you have the feeling of it while you're safe with me, and then you can go out and do it. Like, what are things we can think about?
Yeah, it's prevention, really, right? So I think the
Mm-hmm.
middle school age, you can start talking about it. Normalize that it's something that society does and does a lot of, and people have varying relationships with the substance. That's
Mhm,
so commonly used when you're out in social settings. They see aunties and uncles and whomever, parents, right, consuming. I had this interesting conversation with my daughter when I turned 40. She was like, so you're turning 40? Yeah. She's only 8, you guys. And she goes, okay, but you don't drink adult beverages. And I said, nope, I don't. She goes, okay, but dad does. And I said, yeah, he does. She goes, so will people drink adult beverages? And I said, yeah, I'm going to offer it. Sure, why not if they want it? She goes, okay, well, why don't you? And I
mm,
told her, I said, because I don't like the way it makes me feel. And I don't like the way I behave. And she's like, oh, well, how does it make you feel? And I said, it can make you feel different ways. It can make you feel loosey-goosey. It can make you feel fun. But it can make you feel really sad and dark. I don't know. It just depends. Everybody metabolizes it differently. She goes, well, I drink adult beverages, Mom. And I said, well, when you come of age, you get to make that choice, baby. She goes, all right. I mean, I hid it. I wasn't going to hide it from her. I think it's okay to have these discussions, right? And then when you go into high school, yes, we can set up core values in our home and, have these things put in place. But our kids are spending so much time in society and online. Like, we used to just go to school and come home. They're not doing that anymore. They're bringing outside into the house.
Right.
So this is actually what's influencing them, right? Really influencing them. And so being mindful of that, of like, oh yeah, it's not just like out there and then in here, because outside's coming inside your house every single day.
Right.
It's renting a lot big space in them, whether you know it or not. So talking to them, hey, I know your peers are going to start doing these things. I know you may do this. If you decide to, let's have an open conversation. Come talk to me about it.
Yeah.
Right? Telling them, hey, if you give into peer pressure, you make a mistake, call me. It's cool. You don't want to call me, you're afraid, call that pick a parent. I think giving these kids safe spaces to come to without judgment and talking about it.
Yeah.
How do we know if it's a problem? Talk about like, hey, if you black out, that's not good. And yes, kids are blacking out at young ages and they justify it. So we do need to say it's not okay. Even though society says, well, everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
Everybody is doing it, but like, let's also look at the damage we're doing to our brains and to ourselves. Let's talk about decision making. When we consume a certain amount, we lose the ability of choice, right? Because the front part of our brain turns off.
Yeah.
So I think when we talk to them like that in an educated way of like, hey, these are the things that I'm not saying they will, but I just want you to know these can happen. But a lot of fun things can happen too. It opens that door, fosters this relationship and ability to talk about it. And that you can prevent it. Because if they cross the line, they will come and go, oh, I did this bad thing. Now what do? I'm embarrassed. And that's where you get to come in and talk to them and coach them and go, here's how you can do it. Or I don't know. I'm going to ask Nisha real quick. Get an answer and call you.
Yeah. I think that's so smart and so wise. The way you had the conversation with your daughter, I think it's inspiring me to think about it a lot more. I have a comment and a question, and the comment is more related to what we just talked about. So I discreetly observe my eldest. You guys know him, Jayan, plays soccer. I spent a lot of time with him, but I observe him discreetly for indicia of addictive behavior. So, is he indulging in candy whenever he sees it? We bought him a PlayStation, and does he play it to the point of where it's becoming harmful, right? And I use that as a gauge of maturity of, will he be able to self-control and self-soothe and have a limit? And I think that I read that somewhere. I can't remember. I'm not making this up, but I think as you're raising kids, I think you can start to develop and identify the personality of your child, and that predisposes people to certain behaviors. So my first question is, talk to us about the lack of control. We're talking about control. We're talking about talking to someone else. We're talking about putting the drink down, premeditating. But some of this is biological. Some of this, we're predisposed to addictive behavior, and we might not even know it, or we may be depressed, and this is the thing that gets us up in the day. Talk to us about those reasons that are out of our control, and how can we think about that? And then I'll let you answer that, but just so you know, my follow-up question is the same thing about Seema asked about kids, but we're our spouses or our parents or someone else who's an adult in our house, because oftentimes, self-improvement and self-mastery attracts a certain type of person. So I'm guessing the people that listen to our podcast may or may not know people who are not attracted to self-mastery or self-improvement. And there might be some dialogue there of where one spouse wants to talk to another spouse about their alcohol consumption. And what you gave was fantastic about kids, but how does a wife approach their husband, or how does a husband approach their wife and say, hey, you're drinking a lot. And what's happening is that you're having all this fun at the party, but then it's not fun for me to bring you home, or something like that, right?
Okay, so the first one, when we see somebody that's maybe has a predisposition, right,
Yeah.
for addiction or impulse control
Yes.
behavior,
Yes.
our children don't have the ability because their brains aren't fully developed until what, 24, 26.
Yeah.
So it's as parents putting parameters around them and teaching them. I think one of the best things we can teach them to help develop the ability not to just impulsively behave at home is pausing and breathing. Doing breath work with them and mindfulness with them is a game changer. If they have the ability to just, even your son, like, and this is going to sound crazy, but putting a time cube with the PlayStation, right? And when time cube goes beep, 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 he's going to be like, oh, 2 more minutes, 2 more minutes.
Yeah.
That's where it's like, no, it's off. Dysregulates, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? Go put your head in the freezer and take some really big, deep breaths.
Yeah.
Go get control of your brain and your body. Come back, let's talk about that. Because then he gets to even feel like, whoa, I just went berserk and I agreed to that.
Mm-hmm.
They have that awareness of like, oh no, I went out of control. Right? So getting them to also feel and understand how that works. I did this with my daughter. Actually, we did. So sugar's not good for her. Her brain, we call it wonky brain.
Yeah.
So for 2 weeks, our whole family, I said, if we all cannot eat sugar 2 weeks, I won't even eat my dark chocolate. We'll get a trip to Target. Let's just see how your behavior changes. Let's see how you feel. I knew if she felt it, she'd make better choices. So I said, unless it's the weekend and it's a birthday party, you may have.
Sure.
And they agreed. She was, at this time, she was 26. She was 7.
Yeah.
She said, okay. So she went a whole week and she didn't have as many tantrums or meltdowns. Then it was birthday party time. She looked at me, Mom, can I have it? I said, yeah, girl, it's all you.
Yeah.
She had a cupcake. She didn't even eat the whole thing. She had like a little bit because she like douses it down with water because I don't really think she even likes sugar. She just eats it because like everybody does it.
How it feels, yeah.
Oh my God. She came home and fully discombobulated on the floor. Like discombobulation, meltdown over nothing. And I said, what's wrong with you? And she's like, oh no, I think I must be the shit. Like, poor girl's brain just went crazy.
Yeah.
And then it's not that I've made it bad or like, we don't do this in our house, but I say, let's get smart. If you want a donut in the morning, do you think it's really going to be wise for your brain to also eat the cake later and the cupcake, especially if there's a few birthday parties? So she kind of thinks in herself, what can I handle? Because I'm going to want more, but it does not feel good.
Yeah. And what I love about that is you're empowering your kids kids often feel like they don't have enough control, right? We're telling them when bedtime is to put their coat on, that they need to, eat their whatever or do this or finish their homework. And this is such a great way for them to find empowerment in such a personal way. There's no way I can tell whether my kid is feeling good or feeling bad. Really, truly, I can make an assumption based on their behavior, but I don't know that. I can't feel that.
Yeah.
So I love that it's empowering for them. But also, I heard you say you get buy-in from them before you do it. Right. And I think this is something that I learned, I wouldn't say too late because now we practice it when I think about it. But if I want to make a change, I don't just sit there and say, this is how we're going to do things. We talk about it and we say, okay, so I've noticed X. I want us to try Y. So how do we talk about it, but then if I'm firm in my decision of like, no, we're really going to bed at this time and not later, or we're really not eating sugar or whatever. If I'm firm in that decision, I still think it's beneficial. And I found it to be beneficial, at least for me and my kids, to say, do you understand that if you choose X, then I will ask you to do Y? I don't want you to feel like it's a surprise when the timer goes off that I'm asking you to get off the PlayStation. Like, you knew this ahead of time, right? They might still feel that. They might still say, I didn't know, but at least you in your parent mind know you didn't spring this on them. They agreed to it. You had the conversation.
You did. And it's also that, again, prevention, right?
Yeah.
Like if you think about it, And if you have a kid that is like that has a hard time, like gets hyper focused on something and you're telling them to break their focus, that does a magnitude to their brain. So yes, you're going to try to prepare them and go, here's the timer here. I love cube timers. A lot of executives use it, right? Because our brains are all over the place. I use them too. So my daughters find it funny that I use them and then I give it to them to use, but I do it with eating too.
Yeah.
Right? Like food, because we're like, eat quicker, eat this, you gotta eat. I just put a timer and I start eating. Really. So yeah, I think it's communicating, talking, letting them feel it, the differences in the two, even with screen time. I think this week we're going to try this. Yeah, sometimes it shoots me in the foot when my kids don't get my food. Yeah. Because I have to then play cards 80 million times. I'm willing to do that if they can then see the difference of what happened in their brains and in their behaviors. Because that's long lasting versus me just telling them.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole game. Yeah, that's the whole game, is to empower them to make smarter choices, right?
Yes.
And we do something very similar to what you both described. We empower our kids to set their own limits and their own boundaries. And sometimes it is uncomfortable. You have to go outside of what you think is a good boundary, right? So my daughter Sandri is 3, and randomly she'll be like, "Well, can I have some M&Ms?" I'll say, "Yes." "How many?" And she'll say, 40. Like, okay, well, that's too much. And then she'll say, 2? Like, sure, 2 works, right? And she said, 3? 3 works. And then we'll get to like 7. And I'm like, okay, we got to 7. And by then, the impetus of asking and feeling recognized and feeling empowered that you have some control is kind of exhausted. Like that's like willpower. There's only so much of that. But yeah, we use timers all the time. Like, oh, I want to watch. How long do you want to watch for? 10 minutes, set a timer. And then, we were fortunate, knock on wood, magically the timer goes off. When they turn it off, they put it away. And I think that those might all sound trivial in the house with an iPad and M&Ms, but it is, in my belief, what I've had to learn as an adult on how to, keep boundaries and guideposts on my life.
Right. Well, when you think about it, we're teaching our children, again, when screen time is so easy, Netflix, scrolling on Instagram, getting lost in all this stuff is so easy. We're teaching them, like you're saying, we're setting the foundation for when they become adults, how they can manage it better.
Yeah.
Whether it's using their screen time on their iPhone, who cares?
Yeah.
They're learning to manage it better and not getting consumed by these things.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I love it. So what about that second question?
I would suggest taking it in of how it affects you, right? When this happens, I feel this makes me feel disconnected from you. This makes me feel unsafe. Right? Using language like that versus like, you're embarrassing me and you're unhealthy and you can't control yourself. Stay away from that. Stay away from the shaming, right? How is it affecting you emotionally? How is it affecting you as a spouse, as a parent? I think speaking to those, people can hear it. People understand that, coming with compassion, right? Versus like, God, you just yell at the kids when you come home from drinking. You're such a terrible dad. Yeah. Versus, oh my gosh, like I felt really scared the other night. And the kids were sharing with me that they were crying because, you came in and you yelled at everybody and then you just passed out and everybody was so scared and worried.
Yeah.
And it's just been uneasy in the house now because we don't know what to do. I want to throw this out with you, but we have to do something different. We can't just keep doing this. And you can, obviously let your loved one try to figure it out. But if there's a certain point where they are trying to figure it out and it's not getting figured out, then that's where you go, hey, I'm stepping in and I'm going to start figuring it out.
Really well said. Nisha, thank you so much. You have shared a lot of wisdom on a topic that I think is coming into the light a lot more. I think people are talking about alcohol and its use and putting it under a microscope in everyday life and how it impacts people. Should we jump into the wrap up?
Let's do it.
All right. So we talked a lot about sobriety. We talked about a lot of parenting. We talked a lot about self-control. But, we live in an instant gratification world. We even talked about that, I think, how we want quick fixes. But we want a good quick fix today. We want something that you have from your life where you played high level of travel, soccer, went to school in Georgia, you're a parent, you're a licensed professional counselor, you've got a lot of lived experience. What's one thing that if someone who's listening to this episode does today, by tomorrow, they will have a undoubtedly different and better life.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Here we go, you guys. And I'm going to go back to this because I said it earlier. The emotion regulation skills of putting your head in the freezer. When you get mad, when you get upset, when you feel out of control, literally open the freezer, put your head in there and do belly breath. It really will calm your whole nervous system down. Really. And it has saved so many arguments
Wow.
and children from tantruming for hours.
For how long?
Wow.
For how long? I usually tell people to do like 5 to 10 breaths.
5 to 10 breaths. Okay. And is this, I do have a follow-up question I need to know. And
Sorry,
I know Seema,
you
no,
said one
Seema's
quick
asking.
answer.
Yeah. I want to ask for Seema this question. Is it something we do for ourselves, or can we shove someone else's face in the freezer and make them breathe?
So if it's somebody else, to be honest, give them like a pack of peas or whatever you have, baggy.
Okay.
Put it on the feet.
Okay.
You know, just be like right here.
And like in a slapping motion, or just like
no,
gently?
gentle.
Gentle. Okay.
You know?
I want to make sure I get
as like
it right.
as your kid's like losing, you're like, oh, but you know,
Okay.
like totally.
All right. So no throwing peas at anyone. Is that?
Don't throw it. No, we just want to hold it.
Hold it.
Gently calm it down. You know, they have those like ice packs that are like made out of cloth.
But
That they're not so cold, but they're cool. So if you have like little kids, like littles, that might be good.
And kids find to stick their head in the freezer. This is why I said it's for adults and children.
Yeah.
They love it. Families will make games out of this. Like they literally put it on the fridge. Like who uses the most skills in a week? And I'll teach them like 4 quick skills that they just all practice.
I love that. In my house, we call it a time-in ticket.
Oh.
And we've done all sorts of things, but I'm definitely going to add the freezer one to the mix.
That is probably the most unique tip we've had. And I'm looking forward to trying it.
Yeah. So good.
You guys should try it and post a video, please, because I'd love to see it.
Challenge. Post a picture, tag Nisha, tag the podcast, tag TheNishe and myself. We want to see you guys put this to use, and we want to know how it goes for you.
I love it. But Nisha, if next time you do this, you have to post as well so we can see how it's done properly.
Yes, I will.
All right.
Absolutely. Good. So Nisha, as you know, somebody before you has, without knowing who you are, what we're going to talk about, has asked a question of you. You get to answer it. And then you get to ask another question to leave for the next guest in the same fashion. Okay, so this is from Dr. Rahul Damania. He does a lot of med education and a whole host of other amazing things. But his question for you is, what is one daily habit that you wish you had started a decade ago? And how is that habit now shaping your life? How helpful would it have been to start earlier?
Walking every morning, even if it's for 15 minutes. And the reason I say that is I shared earlier, I have a very busy brain. And so for me, movement is like medicine, not to sound cheesy, but even just a 15-minute walk before I do my seated meditation and prayer every day just does so much wonders. It wakes me up, but also just calms my system and my brain.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is you would have had less busy brain.
Oh God, so much less busy brain.
More focused. Yay for all the things. What is your question that you want to ask of our next guest?
What purpose are you trying to fulfill with the work that you do?
That's a great question. And listeners, we encourage you to answer. And the reason we're silent is because we're silently answering this in our head. You've been a wealth of knowledge, and outside of saying thank you, we don't really have a way to thank our guests. And our listeners are benefiting, we're benefiting from you. And we also wanted to have people who are not part of the show benefit. And so Seema and I, we invite our guests at this point to share an organization that they care about, to raise awareness with our listeners and our audience, but also so we can make a contribution to that organization as a way of saying thank you on your behalf.
Wow, thank you guys so much. Yeah, the organization I pick is Jiva Mental Health out of California. They're doing phenomenal work on providing mental health, raising awareness, just on various topics, everything from postpartum to addiction, depression, anxiety. They also offer affordable session prices to those that can't afford it. Really focused in our community. They're doing great work out there.
Oh, terrific. Jiva, right? Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Tell us where the listeners can get a hold of you, where can they find you, And please feel free to share anything that you want to. If you have something going on that you're particularly excited about, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much. So you guys can find me obviously on Insta, Nisha Patel Coaching. Check out my website, TheNishe.com. And yeah, what I'm getting into is just doing more podcasts. Really, my purpose is rooted in helping as many people as I can that are suffering behind closed doors, right? My sobriety coaching is focused on helping people reintegrate into life. Though it says sobriety, that can be a health choice, that can be behaviors, it can be decisions, it can be a multitude of things. But really, my goal is to help people feel aligned and how do we integrate back into a community that may not live the same way that we want to lead our life. And how do we do that?